So Sandeep is our security expert at IIT Kanpur. So he has a long profile, but I'll give a brief introduction to Sandeep. So Sandeep is going to talk about cyber security. So Sandeep Sandeep Shukla, he is a Poonam and Prabhu Goyal Chair Professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at IIT Kanpur. He was also the previous head of the CSE department at IIT Kanpur. So he is currently the editor-in-chief of the ACM transactions on embedded system and an associate editor for ACM transaction on cyber physical systems. He is an IEEE fellow for his contribution to applied probabilistic model checking for system design. So it's a very short introduction to Sandeep. So I thank you for accepting our talk. He is a cyber security expert. He actually is the coordinator of the C3I hub at IIT Kanpur, which is probably the most significant hub on cyber security in India. So Sandeep, thanks for agreeing. I request you to go ahead with your talk.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yes, Sandeep. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let me see if I can find this. My screen. Okay. So here now I have to this. All right. So can you hear me well? So I can.
Yes, Sandeep. Yes, we can see and hear you well.
Right. So since this is a half an hour talk, so I didn't want to make a overview of cybersecurity, which is kind of difficult to do in half an hour. So what I want to focus on is related to something that has happened very recently, which is taking the U.S. government by storm, and the various corporations have been affected by this attack, which is the SolarWind Orion attack that seems to have been done by Russia, although attribution is very hard in such cases. But this attack is a very, very pervasive attack into the IT and infrastructure. In some cases, people are suspecting that in some cases the control system, operation technology or OT also have been affected by this. But the reason why I chose this topic is also related to the fact that this is ComSoc, and I know that this is a place where a lot of discussion goes on the 5G, upcoming 5G telecommunication systems. And as you know that this 5G is going to be completely based on various vendors' systems, because we don't really develop those in India. And therefore, there is a possibility, and that has to be taken very seriously, is supply chain compromise, a supply chain attack. And I want to actually illustrate this with the ongoing SolarWind case. And the Microsoft is calling it SolariGate, and the FireEye is calling it solar wind or something. But this is a big incident. So what the way I want to talk about is what is a software supply chain attack and why is it dangerous? And then I'll talk about the fact that this SolarWind case is not a novel attack, although this has been one of the most virulent attack that we have seen ever in the supply chain compromise. But we'll talk about what we have been seeing from kind of like from 2014 onwards, a number of attacks that is related to compromise of the supply chain. And then I'll talk a little bit about the SolarWind case in particular. And then I'll try to outline a few things that one should do as a IT owner or system owner to be cautious about supply chain attack. There is no 100% guarantee, because attackers are very clever, but we can do a few things that will raise the bar for the attacker to actually do something. And then I'll conclude. So what is a supply chain attack? Now, supply chain attack can happen through hardware also, but for example, many of our hardware, or most of our hardware is manufactured in other countries. And if there are Trojans implanted in those devices, it is quite possible that all our data and all our operations may be compromised. But it's much harder to actually do hardware compromise than doing software compromise. So we'll focus on software supply chain attack. So compromising software code through cyber attacks, insider threats, and other close access activities at any phase of the supply chain to infect an unsuspecting customer. So as I will show you with data that most customers, corporate customers or organizations, they actually depend on a lot of third-party vendors to build their system. And this dependence basically can be utilized by attackers to compromise your entire infrastructure. So, so a software is developed through a pipeline, right? So it starts from the concept phase, then design, development, integration, deployment, then upgrade and patch management. We always get upgrades and patches, and then the software retires. And what supply chain compromise can do is that it can start at the concept phase, because if you're giving a third party in a third country to design your software at the concept phase itself, a compromise may be planned, and all the way from development phase, integration phase, these are usually happening through insider attacks, insider in the third-party vendor. But after it gets into the deployment servers from which we download our software or we deploy our software, or the servers through which patches are maintained and patches are provided to the customers, this can be actually compromised. And usually we have seen compromise of these in most software supply chain attacks. So let's look at some data. So recently, a company called BlueViant, they did a survey of supply chain security, and they talked to 1,500 CISOs and other system owners in June of 2020. And it turns out that 77% companies have limited visibility around third-party vendors. So they don't know what security mechanisms are protecting their vendors. What security mechanism is put in place in the servers from which they're downloading their software or downloading patches, automatically patches are being pushed and so on. And 80% companies also reported that they have suffered a third-party related breach, not necessarily supply chain, because often the third party is given access to your network because you don't want to do all the maintenance and other things, fixing configuration issues and so on. So we often give third party access to our system, and then compromise can happen through that also. That wouldn't be a supply chain attack, but what this 80% figure says is that third party related breach happened in 80% companies that have been surveyed. And in this bar chart, as you see that 23% companies had one such breach reported at least, and then 47% companies had 2 to 5 such breaches, and 10% has 6 to 10, and 20% has reported none. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means that either it didn't happen or they did not yet found out, because as we'll see, SolarWinds took about 9 months for figuring out. The first company that figured out was FireEye, which is a security company. And then it turns out that slowly Microsoft found out, and then all the different organizations within the US government found out that they have been deeply penetrated through this. Now here is another statistics which is also quite scary. So here it was they were asked, like, how frequently do you assess third-party vendors in the past 12 months? So what that means is that you assess the security practices and security mechanisms, controls put in place in the third-party vendor, whose software you are depending on, whom you are giving access to your system for configuration and so on. And it turns out only 2% companies out of those 1,500 companies said that they actually monitor in real time. So they actually demand their suppliers give visibility to them real time or on a daily basis. 11% companies said that they actually do this a weekly basis, 34% on a monthly basis, 21% quarterly basis, and 32% less frequently. So that itself shows that companies are not taking this third-party vendors seriously, and majority of the companies. Now let's see how pervasive is it that our systems are developed with a lot of third-party components. So utilities sector, which includes power, sewage, water treatment, and so on. It turns out the average number of third-party vendors utility organizations use is 1,013, which includes things like Microsoft and McAfee for antivirus, all the way to network monitoring system like SolarWind Orion is a network infrastructure monitoring system. So all kinds of things they use, and then average number turns out to be about 1,000 plus. And then 59% of the companies have more than 500 third-party vendors supplied components in their system. And 82% of the utilities said that they do not monitor all third-party suppliers for cyber risk, right? So this is the situation. In the business services sector, including legal, accounting, consultancy firm, and so on and so forth, they are more dependent on third-party vendors. And so now the average number seems to be 2,500 plus. 70% work with more than 500 vendors. And then 71% do not monitor the third-party suppliers for cyber risk. So you can understand what is the situation on the ground. So, as we said that in the earlier software development lifecycle diagram that I showed earlier, this is a more elaborate diagram of that. So you can have attacks on the software development tools, or you can have attacks on the deployment and patch management sites. And in either case, in case of software tool attack, your software that you develop, the third party develops, may already have malicious components. But in case the software is done properly, and its security was properly vetted, then the patch management, and that is what can happen in most cases, is that patch management sites get compromised, and then they actually infect the customers. In SolarWind, actually, this is where the attack happened, but usually the attack happens more on this side. So although the SolarWind case is making headlines these days, but what we saw is that since last 6, 7, 8 years, there have been a lot of cases. Like in one cases, there is this company, the CC Cleaner, which basically cleans your computer for unused files and so on to make space. 18 companies were targeted, infected 40 computers, and this included companies like Samsung, Sony, Asus, Intel, and so on. There was a case in South Korea, and this case, antivirus package was compromised, and they could steal South Korean classified military data. Now, if many of you remember, the ransomware attack started with this, NotPetya and few variants of ransomware around 2017 and so on. And one of the case was with the company called MeDoc in Ukraine. It was an accounting software that is used very widely in Eastern Europe. And they actually, their PaaS server was actually compromised. and it affected FedEx and Maersk and cost them about 300 million. Software configuration management software was compromised, developed by Perforce, and it actually affected source code from Google to all the way to defense contractors like Northrop Grumman, Dow Chemicals, and so on. There are some other cases like where consumer type of software like a BitTorrent client got their publishing of the software and code signing got compromised, and almost 4 lakh pieces were affected in Russia, Turkey, and Ukraine. And ASUS, which is they have a live update utility that was compromised and actually affected over hundreds of thousands of different pieces. So this is not new. So what is new in the SolarGate? So we'll see that what is SolarWind case is that first of all the development was compromised. So the perpetrators somehow got into their development environment and then added a few very benign looking lines of code into a single shared library, which is a DLL file. And then this DLL file basically became a backdoor, and it only composed of about 4,000 lines of code. Now, a vast system like SolarWind Orion, it has millions of lines of code. So 4,000 lines of code is nothing. Of course, the code was benign looking, so any code review and other kind of activities did not find it. Now, what was more scary in this case is that the compromised file was digitally signed by the organization. So when the new code was downloaded by almost 18,000 customers, there was digital signature. When you actually download code, you actually check for the digital signature of the actual vendor who is supposed to have developed the code. Now, in this case, the digital digital signature matched. So there was no question of suspicion from the customers. And the inserted code was also runtime lightweight. So they actually created a parallel thread in which do the actual normal operation of the DLL, so that the actual operation is not altered or interrupted. Whatever was supposed to happen as backdoor activities was on the parallel thread. So this is the infection chain. So attacker basically went into the development environment and basically changed this solarwind.orion.core.businesslayer.dll. And there the added code was basically a backdoor. And the backdoor, the way the backdoor works, I will give you a little more insight into that. Backdoor inspects the environment, and then it gathers information and send it to a command and control server. Command and control server was hosted in a cloud. And the interesting thing was this cloud, the super domain was in Microsoft, in Azure, and then the subdomain was in AWS. So shutting down this command and control would be more challenging. Now this command and control server then will send more, more code, more commands back to the machine, compromised machine, which will then start doing other activities. And in some cases, it also gave it another domain to report to. So there was a second CNC server, the command and control server. So you can see that, so this is Microsoft has done a wonderful analysis already. So this is from this Microsoft analysis, and I have the link to the analysis, so you can read it for yourself, because you have to read it several times to understand. So this is basically what they did is, this is where the thread was spawned, the thread on which the backdoor activity was happening. And they found a particular function which is frequently called, this refresh internal is frequently called. So to gain persistence, they added this very, very cleverly. So they understood the code very well. And then they obfuscated most of the things. So this is basically an obfuscated set of names that will be unobfuscated at the runtime. So during the code check, it will not be very, very obvious that there is a command and control server involved and so on. So the way the backdoor works is that it basically gets in the parallel thread, then it starts verifying that the process hosting the malicious DLL is named this business layer host.exe. It checks that the last write time of the malicious DLL is 12 to 14 days earlier. So there is a gestation period of 12 to 14 days. So it does not activate until it is sure that this DLL has not been caught by some monitoring system. It delays execution by random amounts of time. Then it verifies that the domain name of the current device meets certain conditions. For example, it does not want to run on SolarWinds' own domain. It doesn't want to run on a test domain. So that nobody, they're sure that this piece of DLL is not activated on a system in which there is a testing going on, because then there is a chance of getting caught. And so they also checked certain strings in the domain name so that they know that certain types of domains they don't want to activate on. Then it checks that there is no running process related to security related software like WinDebug or Autoruns, Wireshark. They don't want, if those things are running, then they won't activate. There is no driver loaded from security related software. So all these checks are there in these 4,000 lines of code. And then it also has checks that the host api.solarwinds.com resolves to an expected IP address. So all these checks they have done. And if any of these checks fail, the backdoor terminates. So it does not want to reveal itself on a test or debug environment. After the extensive validation, the backdoor goes into the main execution phase. So it receives instruction from the command and control server. So this is actually a persistent remote access Trojan. So they actually now work for the C2 server, although the main software keeps working as it is, but in this parallel thread, they are communicating with the C2 server. And then the commands are, that they get are manipulating registry keys to spawning new processes, deleting files, and so on. Also, the C2 server domain for each victim is different. So they actually have an algorithm with a pseudo random URL component of the URL that they create on the spot to actually go to. And finally, the backdoor composes a JSON file with all kinds of information and sends it to the C2 server. If the communication is successful, then the C2 server responds with an encoded compressed buffer of data containing commands to further execute. It may also give you an additional C2 address, so another CNC server. And at this point, the attacker can actually control the entire machine. So it can run, stop, enumerate processes, read, write, enumerate files. It can manipulate registry keys. It can collect and upload information about the device. And it can also restart the device, wait, or exit. Now, the attacker sitting on the command and control, they have now full hands-on keyboard access. So they can do privilege escalation, they can do credential theft, they can do lateral movement through the network, which happened to all the US government agencies that have been affected. And to avoid detection, they renamed the Windows administrative tool like @find, which were then used for domain enumeration. Domain enumeration is to understand the entire domain, subdomain of the victim's site. And lateral movement was observed via various techniques like remote task creation, and persistence was achieved by backdoors. So they actually created multiple different processes which are totally under their control. So who is affected? The US government seems to be most affected. They have multiple government departments, including their nuclear administration, their CISA, their cybersecurity intelligence agency, their defense, commerce department, state department, treasury, and they're still figuring out what data has been stolen. So FireEye has figured out that they have stolen their tools, their red teaming tools. But Microsoft thinks that they have not been affected so much, but they found this, the presence of this in their system. But US government departments are still figuring out, or at least they haven't told us, what kind of information have been compromised. And it seems like total 18,000 customers downloaded the particular patch which was affected. So any patch before that was not affected. So there, out of 300,000 customers of SolarWinds Orion, 18,000 seems to have downloaded that particular patch, which included FireEye, Microsoft, Cisco, and so on. And a few other governments, including Israel, might have been affected. Now, impact is obviously espionage, because now they can exfiltrate all kinds of data from affected systems, the intellectual property, secret documents, government secret documents, and emails. It is not clear yet the extent of the damage. Also, there has been a credential compromise, which is that the credentials are most probably what is being suspected is that they were stolen with Mimikatz tool from the memory. So the credential token signing certificate might have been in the memory, which has been stolen, and then they can sign certificates through which anywhere the attacker can access in the system, even if you have multiple zero trust network kind of environment. So the prevention measures, for software developers are multiple. Like they have to, the development, test, deployment, patch management must be segregated with zero trust network, with user credential segregation, code integrity and process. The code integrity, process and policy must be very, very strict. APIs must be secure. APIs must be authenticated. Multi-factor authentication, they need strong password policy, a few other things. So I think I'm running out of time. So I will basically you can do whatever you want to do to actually make sure that even if you get compromised, you have enough segregation in your network, and sensitive resources are highly segregated, and one has to scale multiple fences before they can reach that. So even if they can do some credential stealing, they cannot reach the sensitive resources. And the customers of third-party vendors also have to do all kinds of monitorings in their system. For example, if a network monitoring should have already caught the connection to the C2 servers. It is unclear why none of these cases that was detected. So there are various things that one has to do. So one thing that I have found in India working with various agencies is that none of the agencies we ask, what is your cybersecurity policy? They don't have any. So if there is no cybersecurity policy, then you cannot enforce it, right? So have a well-defined cybersecurity policy. Check compliance against adopted policy automatically using something like a security content automation protocol. Train the workforce repeatedly and frequently to be on watch for this kind of things. And finally, my conclusion is that the supply chain risk must be taken very, very seriously in the context of 5G. because we are not self-sufficient in software or hardware in this, as per my understanding. The response to SolarWinds India has been pretty muted and almost borderline negligent. We have contacted government several times, but their response has been, oh, we have sent advisories, but that's not enough. They should see what the US government response is like, and needs to change at all levels. The awareness, the policy enforcement must change at all levels, governments, agencies, regulators, organizations, and people. So that would be that is where I will stop because I ran out of time.
Thank you, Sandeep, for the excellent talk. So there are a lot of questions. I see a large number of questions. We'll see. I'll just pose a few of them to you.
Okay.
Wait, let me just take a look. Sandeep, there are several questions. Okay, I'll start from the first one. Let's see like how much time we have. We can. So the first one is, so the first question, Sandeep, is it humanly possible to monitor compromises in code? And what about ML/automation to monitor such compromises and vulnerability?
That's a very good question. So, so security is never 100%. You cannot say that I have a method by which I guarantee nothing will happen. But you have to raise the bar for the attacker. So code review, static analysis of the code, all that stuff can help. But in this case, the code was written so cleverly, I think that none of the tools would have found, because there is nothing very malicious looking going on. Some of the network monitoring should have triggered some alert because of the connection to certain domains, which names to me looks very suspicious. But then when you have a very large system, you don't, there are so many domains that, they communicate to for various API calls and so on. It's very difficult to blacklist certain types of domains. So you might have to whitelist your domains, but for that you have to understand your system so well. And I think many cases that's not done, because as you saw that there are thousands of third-party vendor components in your system. So each of them make many different API calls and so on to back to their own servers and so on. So yeah, so we need to actually devise the way we do things and raise the bar. But I don't think that we can guarantee anything.
Sandeep, I'll club two questions. The first one is, are there any attempts by IITs to develop a constantly evolving security penetration test suite, which the industry in India can use for their R&D operations? And a similar one is, what are the essential precautionary measures being framed or under process in your lab to protect other agencies and research labs from cyber attacks?
Good question. Yeah, so we do a lot of penetration testing for critical infrastructure. So we work on power system, we have in our labs test beds and so on. We still have some very preliminary tools for automating some of these tests, but penetration test is also requires a lot of cleverness. So not possible everything to be done completely automatically. So yeah, so we want to do more. Certainly we need to do more. The other thing that we have been, so we are working with a few agencies in the government. Recently, I did a cybersecurity policy framework for one of the agencies, and it was 100+ pages, and it has been taking them months to actually figure out whether they really want to implement that. But they need to have cybersecurity policy. So we are working on that. So policy framework is the first thing to start with. And if you ask any agency, if you go to any agency and ask them, give me your cybersecurity policy, I think the answer would be, we don't have one. Even IIT Kanpur doesn't have one. So, so therefore, we have to have that. We have to have cybersecurity policy framework and way to enforce the policy. and then check compliance through automation to the policy, because you cannot manually check whether all the policy, any policy is being violated. So we are working towards all this, but we are only one place, right? So this has to be very pervasive activity throughout the country. I think it requires a lot more people to come up with these things.
Sandeep, one last question. There are several questions, so I'll take one more question. So, stopping supply chain poisoning is very difficult given so many variables and third-party dependencies. How
Right.
can we ensure attestation at endpoint for arresting a possible C2C access?
Right. So I think that one has to really analyze their system and figure out what C2C accesses are required and whitelist them. And I think that that will create some friction at least. But I think that there is no bounds to the cleverness of the attackers, especially these are nation state attackers. So we have to constantly struggle and figure out, and monitoring is more important than stopping, right? So monitoring that you are being attacked and then trying to isolate that part of the system, keeping the system as segregated as possible through zoning and all that stuff is very important today. So I think that those things have to be done, but I don't have an answer that is a bullet, silver bullet, right? So
Okay, Sandeep, thanks a lot for agreeing to talk at the event and taking the questions.
thank you.
So
My
it was a
pleasure.
very informative talk, given that there were other security talks as well yesterday. So I think it was a good compliment for the school. Thanks a lot, Sandeep, for agreeing to talk.
Thank you.
And thanks again.
Thank you, Rajesh.